Good people of Donegal, how are you? Are you well? I'm delighted you put the good weather on for me here today. Fair play to you. It's a great little country if you could only put a roof over it, in fairness. I do want to thank the Donegal Cumann for all the hard work that they've done over the last while. There has been tremendous growth in the Donegal Aontú Cumann over the last 5 years. And I have to say there's probably one person I need to specially thank in relation to that, and that's the driving force, the ball of energy, who is Mary T. Sweeney, for all of the work in there. Mary T. Sweeney is a force of nature to be reckoned with, and when she gets on the council in Donegal, they will know she is there. There's no doubt about that. And I also want to thank these fantastic candidates who've actually put their names forward in relation to this. I think Donegal has probably the second or third biggest candidate offering for Aontú across the country, just behind Meath, which you would expect, in fairness, boo. But also Cork as well. But it's the third strongest county in terms of candidates are standing. And we have a significant opportunity to actually redraw the political map in this county, to make it a watershed election in terms of the European elections and also the local elections. I have no doubt about that. And I think the last time I was here with you was about a couple of weeks before the referendums. And people might have seen the referendums. They saw how they operated. I think that the referendums showed the infrastructure of a political bubble in Ireland. How we have a political system in Dublin that simply talks to itself. That's talking to NGOs, that's talking to some of the media. They're not talking to the people who pay their wages, which are the people of Ireland. They're simply not listening to what the people of Ireland want. And incredibly, in that referendum, only one political party analysed the contents of both of those referendums, made its decision based upon the evidence, and then had the backbone to stand up for that decision, fought that referendum, took on the political establishment, and we won. And that was an amazing victory for the organisation. And it's interesting, I spoke to people in Sinn Féin and the Labour Party, and I said, why did you support those referendums? And both parties said, we did not want to go against the NGOs. And I said, are you guys not well paid enough at this stage to be able to think for yourselves and to be able to stand up for yourselves? And when you have a political system that will neither do the thinking for themselves or who don't have the backbone to stand up for themselves, that is a very dangerous situation in the political system. And on a whole range of issues now, Aontú is the only party doing that. I also spoke to the NGOs, and the NGOs are getting big money from the government. Some of the NGOs do good work, there's no doubt about it. But as my grandfather always said, that if you want to know what a person thinks, find out who's paying their wages. And a lot of people in the NGOs are getting big money from the government. Roger O'Gorman gave a warning before those referendums, and he said to those NGOs, they would have to explain themselves if they came out against his referendums. He threatened those NGOs in relation to what happens there. So you have that circular motion, and the only group of people not in that circle are the people of Ireland. I honestly believe that Aontú is the only political party that's listening to the people right across the country. And again, and I said this at our Ardesh, if we were doing a drinking game and people had to take a drink, every time I said Aontú are the only party, we'd be all in trouble tonight, because Aontú the only party that voted against the climate change bill. Why? Because built in that were extra costs for family and extra costs for farmers. And the idea of planning to tax people 6 and 7 years ahead of time was a nonsense, because you don't even know the economic circumstances that those people are going to be in, and yet you're planning to put a tax on them. And we were proven right. Within a year and a half of that bill, the cost of living crisis came upon the situation. And the government still put up the taxes right through that cost of living crisis. We found out that the government charged 3.5 billion euros in fuel taxes last year during the cost of living crisis. They were giving you tea and sympathy with one hand, and they were picking your pocket for extra taxes on the other hand. And I think that's a disgraceful situation for any government to be in. Incredibly, we're the only political party in Leinster House that can define a woman, to say that a woman is a female adult. No other political party is able to that. We are the only political party in Leinster House that can say that we stand up for the rights to life of every single human being, from the baby in the womb to natural death. The only political party that stands up for that issue in the country. We're also the only political party that's fighting the lopsided country that we live in. We are becoming a city-state in Ireland. There is a group within Leinster House that cannot see beyond the M50. They don't even know that Ireland exists beyond the M50. They're forcing all the investment into that small area, and the rest of the country is emptying out of its young people. Incredibly, the average age of the population in Letterkenny is 10 years older now than the average age of the population of Balbriggan outside of Dublin. Why? Because if you're a young person who's got a degree, more than likely you're going to have to go to Dublin to get a job, but of course you won't be able to live in Dublin because it's far too expensive, so you'll have to live 30 and 40 and 50 kilometres away and curse yourself into a commuter hell for a period of about 30 years to pay your mortgage. That's not how we should order this country at all. The only way to order this country is to give the proper infrastructural investment to counties outside of Dublin, because where the infrastructure goes, business follow, and where jobs are, people will live. And that's what we need to see here. I was at the Western Rail Corridor Conference in Sligo yesterday, and Aontú committed fully to the development of the Western Rail Corridor, which should see rail line built from Galway to Sligo to Letterkenny and then on to Derry. That is what's needed if we want to get real in terms of investment. Just another issue on the political bubble. We were the first political party to raise the issue of immigration in this country. But we did so in a respectful way. First of all, we said that the colour of a person's skin is of no more significance than the colour of their eyes. And good people have come to this country, and they are contributing positively to this country, and that needs to be recognised. But we also said the government needs to have a little bit of cop on and some common sense in relation to how it's developing. Most of the information in the public domain around immigration has been brought about by our research. 85% of the people who have come into this country who have received deportation orders, the government has not deported them. And I asked the government where were those people, and the government said they didn't know. And I asked why, and said because they don't check exits at the ports. 5,000 people came through Dublin Airport without a passport. It was Aontú that found that information out. And incredibly, you just found out recently that 75% of the people coming into the state at the moment are registering at the IPO office in Dublin, and the government is not even asking them how they came into the country, which is an incredible situation. And I made the point that's dangerous, because you don't know how many people are being trafficked, you don't know how many people are being smuggled, and you cannot protect those people in those situations at all. So we want a compassionate system that actually helps those who really need help, but also has the common sense to differentiate between those who don't need help in the Irish system. So Aontú have proven themselves, I think, to be radically different than the other political parties. We're a party of investment, we're a party of enterprise, and actually Mary T mentioned the health service there, and that's another massive issue. And I think Mary T and the campaign group here have done massive work in keeping the services open here in Letterkenny Hospital. Anybody that's watching the rest of the country will tell you how important this campaign is. If you look at Limerick at the moment, you had a girl by the name of Aoife Johnston at the age of 16, a girl who loved school, who loved the holidays, had sepsis, was referred to it by a doctor into the A&E there. All she needed was the necessary antibiotics to deal with that sepsis, and it wasn't given to her for 15 hours, and she died as a result. 2 years previous to that, they found a man dead on the floor of the A&E in Limerick Hospital. Rigor mortis had set in. They couldn't even ventilate him at that stage. It is an incredible situation. Hold on to your hospital and all the services here, because if you don't, what's going to happen, you're going to see the same thing as happening in Limerick Hospital. The final point I'll say to you is Aontú is the party of accountability, and this is also really important as well. I mentioned the point that the government has spent 2.25 billion euros on a national children's hospital, and they still don't even have an opening date for it. Leo Varadkar promised it by 2020 for the cost of 700 million euros, save an asteroid hitting the planet. But I would say Fine Gael is far more damaging to this planet than any asteroid would ever be in relation to that. There's no doubt about that. The government bought 22 million euros of ventilators during COVID that never worked. They're now spending $50,000 a year putting them into a store. They bought 100 electric buses in Dublin, but somebody forgot to actually apply for the charging points for those electric buses, and they have not moved an inch since. And the government is spending millions of euros fighting the European Commission so that we don't have to accept the billions of euros in Apple tax that are spent to the country. They're spending your money to stop this country getting the taxes that we need. And I think change is actually happening at the moment. The referendums were a watershed politically. And what I mean by that is, in the last number of months, you've seen Aontú grow from strength to strength. We've now got 2,000 members across the country. Since the referendums, 400 people have joined our organization. And it's incredible that in the polls, Aontú is now polling above People Before Profit, the Greens, and even Labour at the moment. Those parties collectively have 180 years between them. We have 5 years between them. Those parties have 154 elected reps between them. We have 4. Those parties get millions of euros of state funding between them. We get 0. Those parties get oceans of broadcast time. We get very little. And what we do get, we work hard for. What is the difference between us and those parties? We have a backbone. We're not afraid to stand up for the people of Ireland, and we will continue to do that. And the last thing I will say to you is this. For this election to be that watershed, we need help. We have a significant chance of winning the seat here in Midlands Northwest. Some people are confused about what's the right thing to do in that election. Some people are talking about independence. I will say this to you. There are decent independents out there for sure, but the independents are no threat to the political establishment. The establishment would love for the votes to fracture in every single direction across a whole range of independents. What they don't want to happen is that vote to condense in one cohesive, well-organized movement across this country, in every ballot box across the country, because that is the real threat to the political establishment. But it won't happen by accident. We are a membership-based organization. We are the sum of the people. And many people say, well, sure, Peadar, I have no experience in membership. Well, you're in good company, because there's many of our members who came to us with no experience, not from other political parties. And I'll leave you with this, and I've said it before in Donegal. Homer Simpson ran for mayor once, and he said in that race, he said his motto was, why can't somebody else do it? Okay? Now, if that's your motto, if you are a Homer Simpson, you can bet your bottom dollar it will never get done. You need to change that. You need to ask yourself the question, why can't I do it? Get involved in these campaigns. Let's win this election, and let's change this country for good. Garmila Maho Guvgaler.